Hello students, from today we are going to start a new lesson. The lesson is kinematics. It's an interesting lesson and I am going to present you the first video of the second lesson. Actually, physics is a subject which is based on two pillars. One is experimental science and another one is maths. Mostly 60% of this subject will deal with science and 40% of this subject physics will deal with maths. The center aspect of physics is motion. Motion is found at all levels from microscopic level, that means within the atom, to macroscopic level, that means the planetary system and beyond the universe. The entire universe is governed by the various types of motion. The study of various types of motion is expressed using the language of mathematics. That's what kinematics. Now, what do you mean by kinematics? Kinematics is a branch of mechanics which deals with the motion of object without taking force into account. The Greek word kinema means motion. Okay, so we are going to see all the motions in the science. Then, how do objects move and how fast or slow do they move? For example, when 10 athletes run in a race, all of them do not run in a same manner. When comparing the motion or movement of these athletes, one can analyze how fast or slow each athlete run when compared to others. And in this unit, the basic mathematics needed for analyzing motion in terms of its direction and magnitude is covered. That's why we now move into the frame of reference. What do you mean by frame of reference? I think you all know about the frame. When you take a photo, when you have frame it, you can see the particular picture is inside a frame. That is also here referred. If we imagine a coordinate system and the position of an object is described relative to it, then such coordinate system is called frame of reference. You can see this frame of reference have a y-axis, x-axis and a z-axis. So the xy is coordinate in this term. So this is called the y coordinate, x coordinate and z coordinate combined to form a frame. This is called frame and this is called the frame of reference. At any position, instant of time, the frame of reference with respect to which the position of the object is described in terms of position coordinates. That means the position coordinates are x, y and z. That is the distance of the given position of an object along the x, y and z axis. Now, types of motion. First one, linear motion. An object is said to be in linear motion if it moves in a straight line. Let me give an example. See, in this frame, the person is running from a boat to a land. He is running in a straight line. For example, an athlete running on a straight track, a particle falling vertically downwards to the earth are examples for linear motion. Then circular motion. I think you can see the picture. It's a very good example for a circular motion. It moves around only a 360-degree angle. Okay, then only you can clearly note the time. Circular motion is defined as the motion described by an object traversing a circular path. Examples: the whirling motion of a stone attached to a string, the motion of a satellite around the earth are examples of circular motion. Now the third one is rotational motion. If any object moves in a rotational motion about an axis, the motion is called rotation. There is a small difference between the rotational motion and circular motion. Actually, the circular motion, we don't follow the axis, but here the axis is very important. During rotation, every point in the object transfers a circular path about an axis. You can see here. The examples are rotation of a disk about an axis through its center, spinning of earth about its own axis, then the vibratory motion. What do you mean by this vibratory motion? You can see the picture, a perfect vibration. If an object or particle executes to and fro motion, you can see the to and fro motion in the picture very well. About a fixed point, it is said to be vibratory motion. This is also called oscillatory motion. The examples are vibration of a guitar, movement of a swing, and other types of motion like elliptical motion and helical motions are also possible here in the types of motion. Now, elementary concepts of vector algebra. Let me explain you the concepts of vector algebra. First one, scalar. It is a property which can be described only by magnitude. In physics, number of quantities can be described by scalars. Particularly the examples distance, mass, temperature, speed and energy. All this have magnitude but don't have any distance then or direction. Then vector, it is a quantity which is described by both magnitude and direction. Force, velocity, displacement, position vector, acceleration, linear momentum and angular momentum are the examples of vector quantities. Now, different types of vector. It's not very important to get into the types of vector for your level of education. So, let me give some examples. First one, equal vectors. I will show the picture. See, this have equal same direction and equal size. This is called equal vectors. A vector and B vector have equal space and equal direction. Then collinear vector. First one is parallel vectors. You can see the parallel vectors. These are the size may be different, but the length may be different, but they moved in a parallel direction. Then anti-parallel vectors. You can see both have a different direction. Then unit vector, and the last one is orthogonal unit vector. In the picture you can see it shows the x, y and z direction. Okay, this is called orthogonal unit vectors. Now we are moving into a important question, the triangle law of addition method. First one, let me show a picture here. See, the P is at the center and we have having a line from O to P, then P to Q. In between, the PQ is equal to B vector and OP is equal to A vector. Therefore, we can have the OQ as R and R is equal to A plus B. Let us consider two vectors A and B as shown in the figure. To find the resultant of the two vectors, we apply the triangular law of addition as follows. Now, represent the vectors A and B of the two adjacent sides of a triangle. Here A vector and B vector are the two vectors in the adjacent sides of the triangle, which are in the same order. then the resultant is given by the third side of a triangle as shown in the figure. Here R is the third side of the triangle and the resultant is R vector is equal to A plus B, A vector plus B vector. To explain further, the head of the first vector A vector is connected to the tail of the second vector. This is the tail of the second vector, head of the first vector and tail of the second vector. Let theta be the angle between A vector and B vector. Here the angle is theta. Then R is the resultant vector. Here the R is the resultant vector connecting the tail of the first vector to the head of the second vector. Okay, this is the tail of the first vector A and this is the head of the second vector B. Now the magnitude of R vector resultant is given geometrically by the length of the R, that is O and Q, and the direction of the resultant vector is the angle between R vector and A vector. Therefore we write R is equal to A plus B, that is OQ vector is equal to OP vector plus PQ vector. Let me show another picture. Can you see this? Yeah, it has been divided into a new section, that is OA and AN and NB. Here AN is B sin theta, cos theta, and BN is B sin theta. Now let's move. Magnitude of resultant vector. The magnitude and angle of the resultant vector are determined as follows. Consider the triangle ABN, A, B and N, which is obtained by extending the side OA to ON. We are extending the side from OA to ON. Now ABN is a right angled triangle. This ABN is a right angled triangle. That means it shows a 90 degree. Cos theta is equal to, as per the cosine law which you learned in the lower classes, cos theta is equal to AN by B. Cos theta is equal to, here the cos theta is equal to AN by B, which is equal to AN is equal to, we are taking the AN in the right, keeping the AN in one side and taking the B to the other side. That means AN is equal to B cos theta, and sin theta, if you take it in a sin theta, then BN divided by B, BN divided by B, and BN is equal to B sin theta. Is it clear, students? Every day I am expecting the doubts from you, but still now I have not received anything. I think you are all well versed in physics, is it? Right. Now for triangle OBN, okay, triangle OBN, that means the O is here and B is there and N. Triangle OBN. We have OB square is equal to ON square plus BN square. Okay, OB square is equal to OB square is equal to ON square and BN square. If you put the values which are present there, then R square is equal to A plus B cos theta the whole square plus B sin theta the whole square. If you square both with the A plus B the whole square formula, then we get A square plus B square cos theta plus 2AB cos theta plus and the B square sin square theta here. Now combine the two things and we can take A square plus B square to the left side and A square plus B square. Take cos square theta plus sin square theta common and 2AB cos theta, and as you know cos square theta plus sin square theta, it resembles a 1, and if you take a square root in the left hand side, then you have to put a square root in the right hand side. Therefore R is equal to root of A square plus B square plus 2AB cos theta. Instead of this we put 1. Okay. which is the magnitude of the resultant of A vector and B vector. Now the second one, direction of resultant vector. Here theta is the angle between A and B. As you know, theta is the angle between A and B. Then A vector plus B vector modulus is equal to A square plus B square plus 2AB, the root over. Okay, the root over A square plus B square plus 2AB cos theta. If R makes an angle, okay, here we know R is here. So if R makes an angle with alpha, that means with A, then the triangle OBN, the triangle OB and N is equal to tan alpha is equal to BN by ON. That means BN by, the ON is divided into 2. Okay, the ON is divided into, that is OA plus AN. And when we substitute the concerned terms there, BN is equal to B sin theta, that you know, and OA is equal to A and AN is equal to B cos theta. When we substitute all this, alpha is equal to, and we take the tan to the next side, then yeah, this alpha is equal to tan inverse of B sin theta divided by A plus B cos theta. Now we are going to see the subtraction of vectors. The subtraction of vectors have both magnitude and direction. Two vectors cannot be subtracted from each other by the method since the vectors are ordinary algebra. Thus, this subtraction can be done either geometrically or analytically. Here, the given vectors are A vector and B vector. So, for two non-zero vectors, that means the A vector and B vector, which are inclined to each other, these two vectors are inclined to each other at an angle theta. This is the angle and this is going to be the angle at minus B. The difference A vector minus B vector is obtained as follows. The first obtain minus B vector as in figure. The angle between the A vector and the minus B vector, the A vector and the minus B vector is 180 minus theta. Actually, we have to calculate the A minus B, A vector minus B vector. This is the subtraction of two vectors. So, the difference A vector minus B vector is the same as the resultant of A vector and B vector. We can write A vector minus B vector is equal to A vector plus minus B vector, and using the equation A vector plus B vector modulus is equal to root of A square plus B square plus 2AB cos theta, and let us take this as a equation number 1. So we have A vector minus B vector modulus is equal to root of A square plus B square plus 2AB 180 minus theta. For this term we use 180 minus theta. As you know, if you use 180 minus theta, the cos 180 is equal to minus 1. So we have to substitute the value minus cos 180 theta is equal to minus theta is equal to 180, and we get minus cos theta here. So we put the minus here. And continuing that, again from the figure and using the equation similar to equations, we have tan alpha 2 is equal to B sin theta minus theta. Then A plus B cos 180 degree minus theta. Now sine 180 degree minus theta is equal to sine theta. So you can substitute the value here as b sine theta, not minus, and a plus b cos theta, which we have a minus here, minus cos theta. So you can substitute this minus here, a minus b cos theta. Thus the difference a vector minus b vector is a vector with magnitude and direction given by the equations 3 and 4 respectively. Now let's see vector addition using components. Actually, previously we have learned about addition and subtraction of two vectors using geometric methods. But once we choose a coordinate system, the addition and subtraction vectors becomes much easier to perform. See, here we have the two vectors, a vector and b vector are here. The addition and subtraction are using this coordinates. Now the two vectors a vector and b vector in a Cartesian coordinate system can be expressed as a vector is equal to axi cap. This is cap, okay. So we have to pronounce as cap plus ayj cap plus azk cap, and for b vector bxi cap plus byj cap plus bzk cap. And while addition, then the addition of two vectors is equivalent to adding their components x, y and z components. Now a vector plus b vector is equal to ax plus bx the whole bracket I cap plus ay plus by the whole j cap plus az plus bz into the whole bracket k cap. Similarly, for subtraction of two vectors is equivalent to subtracting the corresponding x, y and z components. A vector minus b vector is equal to ax minus bx the whole bracket I plus ay minus by the whole bracket j cap plus az minus bz the whole bracket k cap. The above rules form the analytical way for adding and subtracting two vectors. Now let's move to the scalar product of two vectors. It's a very important question. So students, listen carefully. The scalar product or dot product of two vectors is defined as the product of the magnitude of both the vectors and the cosine of the angle between them. That means a vector dot b vector is equal to ab cos theta. And if there are two vectors a and b having an angle theta between them, then their scalar product is a dot b, which is equal to ab cos theta. Now let's see what are the properties of this scalar vector. Properties, first one, the product quantity a vector dot b vector is always scalar. Remember students, if it is scalar, we don't have the direction, we have only the magnitude. And let me explain the thing magnitude. Most of you have heard about this, but you may not come across the term magnitude and where we use the magnitude here in the vector products. Magnitude generally refers to the quantity or distance, and in relation to the movement we can correlate magnitude with the size and speed of the object. Okay, while it's a movement or in a traveling, the magnitude is referred to size and speed. Okay, now let's move to the next thing. It is positive if the angle between the vector is acute. That means the angle is less than 90 degree, and negative if the angle between them is obtuse angle. That means 90 degree is 90 degree to less than theta less than 180 degree. The second point, the scalar product is commutative. A vector dot b vector is equal to b vector dot a vector. The vector obey distributive law. And what is meant by the distributive law? A vector dot b plus c the whole bracket is equal to vectors is equal to a dot b a vector dot b vector plus a vector dot c vector. The angle between the vectors are theta is equal to cos inverse of a vector dot b vector divided by a b. The fifth point, the scalar product of two vectors will be maximum when cos theta is equal to 1. That means the theta is equal to 0 degree. That is when the vectors are parallel. A vector dot b vector the whole bracket max is equal to a b. Sixth one, the scalar product of two vectors will be minimum when cos theta is equal to minus 1. And if you want to have a minus 1, then we have to the degree should be 180 degree. And a vector dot b vector minimum is equal to minus ab when the vectors are anti-parallel. Seventh one, if two vectors a vectors and b vector are perpendicular to each other, then their product is a vector dot b vector is equal to 0 because cos 90 degrees is equal to 0. Then the vectors a vectors and b vector are said to be mutually orthogonal. Here the orthogonal means right angles to each other. Remember, orthogonal means right angles to each other. 8.1. The scalar product of two vectors with itself is termed as a self dot product, and which is given by a vector the whole square is equal to a vector dot a vector. That means a into cos theta and which is equal to a square. Here the angle which we use for the cos is 0 degree, and as you know 0 degree is equal to 1, cos 0 degree is equal to 1. Therefore the magnitude of norms of the vector a vector is modulus of a vector, that means a, or which is equal to root of a vector into a vector, and if it is a square then you can remove the root into and you can put as a. Let's see the ninth properties. In the case of unit vector n cap, n dot n is equal to 1 into cos 0, which is equal to 1. As you know, cos 0 is equal to 1. For example, I cap is equal to j cap dot j cap, which is equal to k cap dot k cap, which all is equal to 1. In the 10th property, in the case of orthogonal unit vectors, remember, if it is orthogonal, they are right angle to each other. I, j and k, I cap dot j cap is equal to j cap dot k cap, and which is equal to k cap dot I cap. All are equal to 1 into 1 cos 90 degree, which you know cos 90 degree is equal to 0. And 11th one, in terms of components, and the scalar product of a vector and b vector can be written as A vector dot B vector is equal to AX I cap plus AY j cap plus AZ k cap into BX I cap plus BY j cap plus BZ k cap, all are equal to AX BX plus AY BY plus AZ BZ, with all other terms are 0. The magnitude of vectors A vector modulus is given by A vector modulus is equal to A root of AX square plus AY square plus AZ square. Already we saw this in a vector addition using components. Now let's move to the vector product of two vectors. See students, number of quantities used in physics are defined through vector products, particularly the physical quantities, rotational effects like torque, angular momentum are defined through vector products. So it's very important to get the idea, basic ideas about the vectors. The vector product or cross product of two vectors is defined as the another vector having a magnitude equal to the product of the magnitudes of two vectors and the sign angle between them. Remember, if you refer the magnitude, it explains you about the quantity or distance. That means the distance between the vectors. Now, the direction of the product vector is perpendicular to the plane containing two vectors in accordance with the right hand screw rule or right hand thumb rule. I think you remember in the last class I told you about the vector properties, and the vector, it has magnitude and direction, and which is C is equal to C vector is equal to A vector into B vector, which is equal to AB sin theta into n cap. Now let's see the first property of vector cross product. The vector product of any two vectors is always another vector whose direction is perpendicular to the plane containing these two vectors. That means both are right angles to each other or orthogonal to both the vectors A vector and B vector, even though the vectors A vector and B vector may or may not be mutually orthogonal. Let's see the second point. The vector product of two vectors is not commutative. Okay, it's different from scalar. That means the A vector into B vector is not equal to B vector into A vector as we saw in the scalar product, but A vector into B vector is equal to minus B into A vector. Okay, here it's worthwhile to note that if it is modulus, that means the modulus of A vector into B vector is equal to modulus of B vector into A vector, and which is equal to AB sin theta. That means in the case of the product vector A vector into B vector, the B vector into A vector, the magnitudes are equal but the direction are opposite to each other. It's slightly differ from the scalar product. Third product. The vector product of two vectors will have maximum magnitude. That means when sin theta is equal to 1, because sin theta is equal to 90 degree, sin 90 is equal to 1. When the vectors A vector and B vector are orthogonal to each other, again orthogonal means right angles, A vector and B vector maximum is equal to AB into n cap. Fourth properties. The vector product of two non-zero vectors will be minimum when modulus sin theta is equal to 0. That means theta is equal to 0 degree. As you know, sine 0 is equal to 0, and 180 degree A vector into B vector minimum is equal to 0. That is, the product of two non-zero vector vanishes if the vectors are either parallel or anti-parallel. Fifth property, the self cross product, that means the product of vector itself is a null vector. A vector into B vector is equal to A vector into sine theta, which is n cap is equal to 0. In physics, the null vector 0 vector is simply denoted as 0. Sixth one, the self vector products of unit vectors are thus 0. I into I cap into I cap, and j cap into j cap, which is equal to k into k cap, or 0. Seventh one, in the case of orthogonal unit vectors I, j, k caps, in accordance with the right angle screw rule, you can see here in this picture, they are right angles to each other, this I, j and k. I into I cap into j cap is equal to k cap, and j cap into k cap is equal to I cap, and k cap into I cap is equal to j cap. These are only in the case of orthogonal unit vectors, and also the cross product is not commutative. This cross product is not commutative. Therefore, j into I is equal to minus k, and k into j is equal to minus I. Then I into k is equal to minus j. So you have to understand why it represents in the minus symbol, the negative symbol, because it has been turned down. Eighth one, in terms of components, the vector product of two vectors A vector and vector B vector we use in matrices. A vector into B vector is equal to, use as a matrix word, then we can get I cap into AY BZ minus AZ BY. If you know the matrix, you can easily define this, plus J cap AZ BX minus AX BZ plus K cap AX BY minus AY BX. The ninth one, if two vectors A and B form adjacent sides in a parallelogram, then the magnitude of A vector into B vector will be the area of the parallelogram as represented graphically. See, this is A vector and this is B vector, which are separated by an angle theta, and we know modulus of A vector into B vector, which is equal to modulus of A vector and modulus of B vector into sine theta. The 10th one, since we have divided a parallelogram into two equal triangles, okay, in the parallelogram into two equal triangles as shown in the figure, the area of a triangle with A vector and B vector as sides, A vector into B vector modulus by 2, we can get 1 by 2 into modulus of A vector into B vector. Let's see the position vector first. What do you mean by this position vector? See, in this picture you can note there is two axes, one is x, y and z. all the three have been merged or connected in one point. This is the position called P. X, Y and Z in the position P. Now let's see what it denotes. It is a vector which denotes the position of a particle at any instant of time. This particle P at any instant of time, okay, with respect to some reference frames or coordinate system. These reference frames are X, Y and Z. The position vector r cap of the particle at a point P is given by r cap or r vector is equal to xi cap plus yj cap plus zk cap. Here x, y and z are components of r vector. Let's see the distance and displacement. Usually in your lower classes you would have learned about this distance, okay, and not much more than that, but let me explain in a little different way. Distance is the actual path length traveled by an object in the given interval of time during the motion, and it is a positive scalar quantity which does not have any direction. See, this person starts in 0 kilometer and he ends in 6 kilometer. So he covered a 6 meter first and then he moved to his left and turned back. When he reached this, it is the distance of 10 meter. Okay, not about the traveled area but about the traveled distance, length. Then displacement, it is different between the distance and displacement. And what is the difference between the final and initial position of the object in a given interval of time? If you see or if you watch this video or GIF file, you can see the person starts from 0 meter and he ends in the 6th meter. So he had a travel to a displacement and he starts again move to the initial position. So only the displacement is 0 to 2 meter. Only the 2 meter was we taken only the 2 meter. Okay, the recorded time or between the recorded time the displacement was only the 2 meter, but not in the case of distance. It has been calculated to a 10 meter, but here only 2 meter. Let this be the difference between the distance and displacement. It can also be defined as the shortest distance between these two positions of the object, and its direction is from the initial to final position of the object. In displacement, the initial position and final position are very important, and the time period during the given interval of time is also important, because the displacement we can see the direction. That's why displacement is a vector quantity. Now let's see what the momentum explains. The linear momentum, or simply a momentum of a particle, is defined as the product of mass with velocity. Okay, the product of mass with velocity, and the momentum is denoted with p vector. Momentum is also a vector quantity which has magnitude and direction. So P is equal to m into v, that means mass with velocity. Students, the direction of momentum is also in the direction of velocity, and the magnitude of momentum is equal to the product of mass and speed of the particle. That's why P is equal to m into v. The component form of the momentum can be written as Pxi cap plus Pyj cap plus Pz cap is equal to Mvxi plus Mvyj cap plus Mvzk cap. We put the Mv instead of this P. Here the Px is equal to x component of momentum and is equal to mvx. Py is equal to y component of momentum and is equal to mvy. Pz is equal to z component of momentum and is equal to mvz. The unit of momentum is kg ms minus 1. Let's see velocity, speed and acceleration. Students, I know you all well versed in the terms velocity, speed and acceleration, but let me explain in terms of vector quantity. Velocity is equal to the rate of change of position vector with respect to time. Velocity is a vector quantity having symbol v, and the dimensions of velocity is m naught, L1 and t minus 1. The unit of velocity is meter per second. Speed is always a positive scalar. The unit of speed is also meter per second. And acceleration of a particle at time t is given by the ratio of change in velocity over del t as del t approaches to 0. Acceleration A, which is approaches to limit del t to 0, and del v vector by del t, or dv vector divided by dt, which is acceleration in terms of vector quantity. Motion along one dimension. Let's see what do you mean by the average velocity. The average velocity is also a vector quantity, but in one dimension we have only two directions. One is positive direction and another one is negative direction. Hence, we use positive and negative signs to denote the direction here in average velocity. If a particle moves in one dimension, say for example along the x direction, then the average velocity is equal to del x by del t, which is equal to x2 minus x1, initial velocity minus final velocity, initial time, final time minus initial time. The instantaneous velocity or a velocity is defined as v is equal to limit del t to 0 del x by del t or dx by dt. We know that velocity is given by v is equal to dx by dt. Here the dx is the displacement by the time taken. We know dx is equal to v into dt. We take this dt here. By integrating both sides, that means the dx side and the v dt side, we get integration of from x1 to x2 dx is equal to integration t2 to t1 v into dt. So the term t1 integration t1 to t2 v dt represents the area under the curve v as a function of time. And what do you mean by the average speed? The average speed is defined as the ratio of the total path length traveled by a particle in the time interval to the time interval. Average speed is equal to total path length divided by total time period. Relative velocity in 1 and 2 dimensional motions. When two objects A and B are moving with different velocities. Let me explain. Two objects with different velocities. When the velocity of one object A with respect to the other object B is called relative velocity of object A with respect to B. You can have this relative velocity when two persons running in a 100 meter or a 200 meter running race. You can have the one velocity of a person influences the other person's who is running back or front to that person A will have the influence the velocity. This is called relative velocity. Now accelerated motion. During non-uniform motion of an object, that means the object is in stable motion. It has been in rest. The velocity of the object changes from instant to instant, that is, the velocity of the object is no more constant but changes with time. Such motion is said to be an accelerated motion. Average acceleration. We know what do you mean by acceleration. If an object changes its velocity from v1 to v2, that means the velocity changed from v1 to v2 in a time interval of t2 to t1, then the average acceleration is defined as the ratio of change in velocity over the time interval. That means the del t is equal to t2 minus t1, or average acceleration is equal to v2 minus v1 divided by t2 minus t1, or del v vector divided by del t. What do you mean by instantaneous acceleration? I think you all know about the word instantaneous. It means a sudden, immediate acceleration or immediate velocity or immediate decision is called instantaneous action. Instantaneous acceleration or acceleration of a particle at time t is given by the ratio of change in velocity over del t. Okay, the del t means the time interval of final minus the initial. As del t approaches 0, that means the acceleration a vector is equal to limit del t to 0 del v vector divided by del t, which is equal to del v vector divided by dv vector divided by dt. And we can know acceleration is a vector quantity. Its SI unit is ms minus 2 and its dimensional formula is m naught L1 t minus 2. Acceleration is positive if its velocity is increasing and is negative if the velocity is decreasing. The negative acceleration is called retardation or deceleration. What is this projectile motion? When an object is thrown in the air with some initial velocity, that means not just upwards, and then allowed to move under the action of gravity alone, the object is known as projectile. The path followed by the particle is called trajectory. See, some of the examples of projectiles are, first one is an object dropped from the window of a moving train. Second one, a bullet fired from a rifle. Third one, a ball thrown in any direction. Fourth one, a javelin or a shot put thrown by an athlete. Fifth one, a jet of water issuing from a hole near the bottom of a water tank. These are the some of the examples you can see in your day-to-day life, and these are the best examples of projectiles. And it's found that a projectile moves under the combined effect of two velocities. Remember, they have two velocities, and the velocities are a uniform velocity in the horizontal direction, which will not change provided there is no air resistance. And the second one, a uniformly changing velocity, that means it increasing or decreasing in the vertical direction. Because why we are taking this vertical direction as a important thing is the vertical direction is depends upon the gravitational force. To study the motion of a projectile, let us assume that air resistance is neglected and the effect due to the rotation of earth and the curvature of earth is here negligible. Then the acceleration due to gravity is constant in magnitude and direction at all the points of the motion of the projectile. Now we are going to see the projectile in horizontal projection. Students, can you see this picture? It has an horizontal projection. We are throwing a ball from a certain height, and you can see the height variation here. Okay, and the timing and the velocities of x and y. From the meter per second, in the Vx, velocity in the x-axis and the velocity in the y-axis. Okay, here the velocity gets positive when it goes up and negative when it goes down. Can you see? Now let's move to the question. Let a ball thrown from the top of the height, which is minus h, and with the initial velocity minus u. As the ball moves, it covers a horizontal distance. Remember, this is the horizontal distance due to its uniform horizontal velocity u, and a vertical downward distance because of a constant acceleration due to gravity, which I mentioned you earlier, and take time t to reach the ground at the point A. So then the horizontal distance travelled by a ball is x in time t is equal to x, and the vertical distance travelled by the ball y in time t is equal to y. Remember, this is the vertical distance travelled and this is the horizontal distance travelled. Now, motion along horizontal direction. The particle has zero acceleration along x direction, so the initial velocity ux remains constant throughout the motion. The distance travelled by the projectile at the time t is given by the equation which you know already, using the equation of motion, x equal to uxt plus 1 by 2 at square. Here this is the initial velocity and this is the time and this is the acceleration with respect to the time. Since the acceleration is 0 along the x direction because there is no acceleration in the horizontal direction, so if you put a equal to 0 in this equation, then the equation becomes x is equal to ux into t, because instead of 0 it becomes 0. Remember, we can apply the kinetic equation along the x direction and y direction separately. Since this is two-dimensional motion, the velocity will have both horizontal component u and the vertical component u y. So here the initial velocity during the downward direction uy is equal to 0 and a is equal to g. That means the acceleration is with respect to the gravity of the earth, and the distance y at time t is equal to, from the equation of y is equal to uyt plus 1 by 2 at square, we get here the u is equal to 0, so we neglect u. Okay, so y is equal to 1 by 2 into gt square. And substituting the value of t from the equation 1 in equation 2, we have y is equal to 1 by 2 g into x square by ux square, and which we can write as g into 2ux square into x square, or you can put y equal to x square, taking this g by 2ux square as k, and this is the equation number 3, and the k is equal to g by 2ux square is a constant, and this equation y is equal to kx square is called the equation of a parabola. Now let's see what's the time of flight, because it's very important to know the time of flight. Let us consider the example of a tower and a projectile, which we saw in the slides earlier. Let h be the height of the tower, let t be the time taken by the projectile to hit the ground, and after being thrown horizontally from the tower, the time taken for the projectile to complete its trajectory, as I mentioned earlier, trajectory or a time taken by the projectile to hit the ground is called the time of flight. Okay, so time taken by the projectile to hit the ground is called time of flight. So as we know, sy is equal to uyt plus 1 by 2 at square for vertical motion. Here sy is equal to height, right, and t is equal to capital T, and uy is equal to 0. The initial vertical velocity is 0. Then we have h is equal to 1 by 2 gt square, or t is equal to, this is the time of flight, t is equal to root of 2h by g. Can you remember, if you take this t here and if you take this g by h, then 2 up in this left hand side, then 2h by g, and if you take the square root from the right side, then it becomes the root of 2h by g. See, thus the time of flight for projectile motion depends upon the height of the tower. but is independent of the horizontal velocity of projection. Now let's see the horizontal range. The horizontal distance covered by the projectile from the foot of the tower to the point where the projectile hits the ground is called the horizontal range, and it is noted by the equation of motion Sx is equal to uxt plus 1 by 2 at square. So we put Sx is equal to r, that means the range, ux is equal to u, and a is equal to 0 because there is no horizontal acceleration, and capital T is the time of flight. When we substitute all these values of Sx, ux, a and t in this equation, then we get the horizontal range r is equal to u into capital T, because when you put a is equal to 0 here, this equation becomes this set becomes totally 0. So remaining Sx is equal to uxt, and while substituting the values of r about r, u and t, we get horizontal range is equal to u into t. Since we know the time of flight, which is t is equal to root of 2h by g, and we substitute this and we get the horizontal range of the particle as r is equal to u into root of 2h by g. Remember, this above equation implies that the range r is directly proportional to the initial velocity u and inversely proportional to the acceleration due to gravity g. Now we move to an important equation of motion: range and maximum height reached by the particle thrown at an oblique angle which is theta with respect to the horizontal direction. Let me introduce a new picture here. When a ball moves in this direction, you can dream this ball as a football, okay, which when a player kick the ball here, it travels in a vertical direction and then it settles in the horizontal direction, and by moving in the vertical direction, uy is equal to sine theta, and while reaching the horizontal direction, it has ux is equal to u cos theta. Here the ay is equal to minus g, that means the projection, it moves to a certain height or range, but it has a gravity of minus because it reaches the earth after reaching the certain heights in the vertical direction. Consider an object thrown with initial velocity u vector at an angle theta with the horizontal. Then u is equal to u vector is equal to uxi plus uyj, where ux is equal to u cos theta is the horizontal component and uy is equal to u sin theta. This is the vertical component of the velocity, which I mentioned earlier using the picture. Now ux remains constant throughout the motion, okay, it remains constant throughout the motion. Uy changes with time under the effect of acceleration due to gravity, because you can see the acceleration due to gravity differences while it moves in this vertical direction. First it decreases and becomes 0 at the maximum height, after which it again increases till the reach the ground. Hence, after a time t, the velocity along the horizontal motion is equal to Vx is equal to ux plus ax into t. So, ux is equal to u cos theta, that you know. Now the horizontal distance travelled by the projectile in time t is, from the equation of motion, we put Sx is equal to uxt plus 1 by 2 ax into t square. And we know Sx is equal to x and ux is equal to u, and cos theta and ax is equal to 0, because here the acceleration due to gravity becomes 0. So the equation becomes, while substitute the values of Sx, ux and ax, we get x is equal to u cos theta into t, or t is equal to x by u cos theta, which is the equation number 1. Next, for the vertical motion, so far we have seen here the horizontal distance travelled by the projectile. Now let's move to the vertical motion. In the vertical motion, Vy is equal to uy plus ay into t. So we know uy is equal to u sin theta and ay is equal to minus d, which I mentioned earlier. Acceleration due to gravity acts opposite to the motion, and substituting all these values of uy and ay, we get Vy is equal to u sin theta minus gt. This is the equation number 2. Then the vertical distance travelled by the projectile in the same time t is Sy is equal to uyt plus 1 by 2 ay into t square. While substituting the values of Sy is equal to y and uy is equal to u sin theta and ax is equal to minus g, then we get y is equal to u sin theta t minus 1 by 2 gt square. This is equation number 3. We can substitute the values of t from equation number 1 in the equation number 3, which we received here. We have y is equal to u sin theta x by u cos theta minus 1 by 2 g into x square u square cos square theta. And finally, this sine and cos values can combine together. So y is equal to x tan theta minus 1 by 2 g into x square divided by u square cos square theta. Thus, the path followed by the projectile is an inverted parabola. Let's see what's the maximum height, which is denoted as h max. The maximum vertical distance travelled by the projectile or a ball during its journey is called the maximum height. Imagine when a footballer hits the ball, it travels to a maximum height, but at the end it reaches in the opposite goal post. Okay, so the maximum height travelled is called the maximum height here. This is determined as follows. For the vertical part of the motion, we get vy square is equal to uy square plus 2ay into s. And we take uy is equal to u sin theta and a is equal to minus g and s is equal to h max, that means the maximum height. Vy is equal to 0. While substituting these values in the equation, we get, while substituting Vy is equal to 0, it becomes 0 square, and u, instead of uy square we put u square sin square theta, and which is equal to a is equal to minus g. So we take this g to the right hand side, which is equal to 2gh max, or the h max is equal to u sin square theta divided by 2g. We get this 2g down the u square sin square theta. This is the maximum height we received while the ball traveled vertical distance during the projectile motion. And we are going to see the time of flight for this projectile motion, which is a inverted parabola. The total time taken by the projectile from the point of projection till it hits the projected horizontal plane is called the time of flight. This time of flight is the time taken by the projectile to go from point O to B via the point A. If you refer the picture in your book, then you can find it very easy. And as we know, Sy is equal to uyt plus 1 by 2 ayt square, which is in the vertical direction. That means the time of flight in the vertical direction. And if you put Sy is equal to y, which is equal to 0, that means the net displacement in the y direction is 0. Can you accept this? Yeah, because even though, I think you all can see the cursor, even though it travels to a certain height, okay, at the end, the height, the vertical direction, the height is not being saved here. At last, it reached the ground. So, the height it reached becomes 0. That's why we put Sy or y is equal to 0. The net displacement in y direction is 0. Uy is equal to u sin theta and ay is equal to minus g and t is equal to capital T into f. Then we get, instead of Sy 0 and instead of uy we put u sin theta and instead of t we put tf, and which is we have a minus here because the ay is equal to minus g, so minus 1 by 2 g tf square, or if you take this tf square, then the time of flight, okay, tf is equal to 2u sin theta by g. You take this 2 here, okay, and the g becomes a inverted. Let's see what's the horizontal range of this inverted parabola. The maximum horizontal distance between the point of projection and the point of horizontal plane where the projectile hits the ground is called the horizontal range R. This is found easily since the horizontal component of initial velocities remain same. We can write range R is equal to horizontal component of velocity into time of flight, which is equal to u tf cos theta. R is equal to u cos theta into 2u sin theta divided by g, which we also know, and if you substitute it in 1, then 2u square, here we have 2u and here we have 1u, so 2u square sin theta and cos theta divided by g. Finally, we know sin theta cos theta is sin 2 theta, and R is equal to u square sin 2 theta divided by g. Let's see what do you mean by the degrees and radian. See, I have shown you one picture which denotes the range. In measuring the angles, there are several possible units used, but the most common units are degrees and radians. Radians are used in measuring area, volume, circumference of the circle and surface area of spheres. Now let me introduce what do you mean by the radian. Radian is defined as the length of the arc, okay, divided by the radius of the arc, length of the arc divided by the radius of the arc. 1 radian is the angle subtended at the center of the circle by an arc that is equal in length to the radius of the circle. So theta is equal to, this theta is equal to 1 radian. And what do you mean by degree? Degree is the, here this is the degree, is the unit of measurement which is used to determine the size of the angle. When an angle goes all the way around the circle, if it moves like this, then the total angle covered is equivalent to 360 degree. If it moves along the circle, the total angle covered is 360 degree. In terms of radians, the full circle has 2 pi radian. So the half the circle have pi radian. So 1 radian is equal to 180 degree divided by pi degrees, which means 1 radian is equal to 57.295 degree. Let's see, we saw the radian and degree. So using that radian and degree, let's see the angular displacement. Consider a particle covered which is revolving around the point O in a circle of radius r. This is the circle of radius. Let the position of the particle at time t is equal to 0 be A, and after time t its position is at B. The angle described by the particle about the axis of rotation or the center in a given time is called angular displacement. The angle, this is the angle by the described by the particle while it's moving about the axis of rotation. Okay, this is the axis of rotation or center O in a given time is called angular displacement. That is, angular displacement is equal to angle AOB and which is equal to theta. Angle AOB which is equal to theta. The angular displacement theta in radian is related to arc length SAB or radius R, and which is as the unit of angular displacement is radian. Theta is equal to, the theta is equal to S by R. Here S referred as the displacement from this position A to B with respect to the radius. So if you take the displacement, if you want to find out what's the displacement by the particle when it moves around the circle, we have to find the angle, and you have to divide the angle by the radius of the circle. If you divide the angle by the radius of the circle, then you can get the displacement. That means the angular displacement of a particle. Let's see what's the angular velocity, which is omega. This is referred as omega. The rate of change of angular displacement is called angular velocity. The unit of angular velocity is radian per second, rads minus 1. Here the angular velocity is referred with the word omega. Omega is equal to limit del t to 0 and del theta divided by del t is equal to d theta divided by dt. And what you mean by angular acceleration? See, while a particle is moving in a straight line, you can check you can get the length and divided by the meters. But while the object is in a rotational motion, particularly if it has a circular motion, then this distance traveled is measured by the angles. That means the angular velocity and the angular acceleration into action. And this angular acceleration is measured by alpha. The rate of change of angular velocity is called angular acceleration, which is alpha is equal to d omega vector divided by dt. The angular acceleration is also a vector quantity which need not be in same direction as angular velocity. Let's move to the tangential acceleration. Consider an object moving along a circle of radius r. In a time del t, the object travels a distance del s, which is displacement, as shown in the figure. The corresponding angle subtended is del theta. Now, the del s can be written in terms of del theta. That means the displacement is referred here as del theta. Therefore, del s is equal to r into del theta, which is multiplied by the radius it covers, and which is termed as the equation number 1. In a time del t, we have del s by del t is equal to r into del theta by t, which means we divide the displacement by time to find the velocity. So, in the velocity is r into del theta by del t, which is termed as the equation number 2. Since the limit del t to 0, the above equation becomes ds by dt into r omega. Here we put del theta by del t into omega, which means the equation number 3. Here ds by dt is the linear speed, that means velocity, which is tangential to the circle, and omega is the angular speed. So the equation number 3 becomes, which gives the relation between linear speed and angular speed. So v is equal to r into omega. We put this as a equation number 4. And the equation 4 is true only for circular motion. In general, the relation between linear and angular velocity is given by v vector is equal to omega vector into r vector. For circular motion, the equation 5 reduces to equation 4. Since omega vector and r vector are perpendicular to each other, and while differentiating the equation 4, okay, if you differentiate the equation 4 with respect to time, we get, which is r is constant here, so dv dt divided by is equal to r d omega divided by dt, or we get r into alpha. Instead of d omega divided by dt, we get alpha. dv by dt is the tangential acceleration and is denoted as t, and at d omega by dt is the angular acceleration of alpha. Then the equation 5 becomes at is equal to r alpha. The tangential acceleration experienced by an object is circular. Now, the expression for centripetal acceleration. You all know about the centripetal accelerations in your lower classes. Let's take that centripetal acceleration. When a body is in uniform circular motion, its speed remains constant, but the velocity changes continuously due to the change in direction. Hence, the motion is accelerated here in this centripetal acceleration. If you see this, it revolves around the circle, the radius changes from r1 to r2, and the velocity also moves. The body undergoing uniform circular motion is acted upon by acceleration, which is directed along the radius towards the center of the circular path. This acceleration is called centripetal acceleration. Now, let us see the expression by point by point. The centripetal acceleration is derived from a simple geometrical relation between the position and the velocity of vectors. So, let the direction of the position and the velocity vectors shift through the same angle theta in a small interval of time del t. That means we take this displacement by the time del t. While taking that, for a circular motion, r is equal to r1 modulus, which is equal to r2 modulus vector, and v is equal to v1 modulus vector, which is equal to v2 modulus vector. If the particle moves from position vector r1 vector to r2 vector, the displacement is given by del r is equal to r2 minus r1. That means the radius finally minus the radius initial. Okay. The change in the velocity is v1 to v2, and which is given by the del v is equal to final velocity v2 minus the initial velocity v1. See, there is a change in velocity and the change in radius. And finally, we receive the del r vector and del v vector. The magnitudes of the displacement del r and del v satisfy the following relation. That means del r by r is equal to minus del v by v is equal to theta, which you can confirm here. Here the negative sign implies that del v points radially inward, while in the centripetal motion the ball or a particle moves towards the center. So the del v, which is the velocity, is radially inward and towards the center of the circle. So del v is equal to v into del r by r. Then acceleration is equal to del v by del t. As you know, acceleration divided by time, and v by r into del v by del t, which is equal to v square by r. So the uniform circular motion v is equal to omega into r, where omega is the angular velocity of the particle above the center. Then the centripetal acceleration can be written as a is equal to minus omega square into r. Now let's see the expression for total acceleration in the non-uniform circular motion. This is a non-uniform circular motion picture. Now consider a particle moving along a circular path of radius r with a variable speed v. As the speed of the particle changes, so the acceleration has a tangential component. So we put at is equal to dv by dt into r alpha, or at is equal to r into alpha, using this dv by dt as we know in the earlier equation of centripetal motion. As the direction of motion changes continuously, so the acceleration has a radial component. The centripetal acceleration is AC is equal to v square by r. The magnitude of this resultant acceleration is given by A capital R is equal to root of at square plus v square by r the whole bracket square. This resultant acceleration makes an angle theta with the radius vector as you saw in the figure. This angle is given by tan theta is equal to at divided by v square by r. Now we are moving into a main question: kinematic equations of motion for constant acceleration. Let us consider an object moving in a straight line with uniform or constant acceleration a, and let u be the velocity of the object at time t equal to 0 and v be the velocity of the body at a later time t. Let us see the velocity and time relation, the relation between the velocity and a time of a moving body. The acceleration of the body at any instant is given by the first derivative of the velocity with respect to time. That means acceleration is equal to velocity divided by time, dv by dt, or dv is equal to a into dt. integrating both sides with the condition that as time changes from 0 to t, which I mentioned earlier, the velocity changes from u to v, that means initial velocity to final velocity. For the constant acceleration, the integration from u to v dv is equal to integration from 0 to t a dt. We get a out of the integration, so we have only dt, and if you derivate the or integrate the dv, we get v, and we have two values, one is u and v. So a is equal to from 0 to t. That's why we can put v minus u, because here we have two velocities, one is initial velocity and another one is final velocity. So v minus u is equal to a into t, because t is only 0 to t. Or we can make it as v is equal to u plus at. This is the equation number 1 of the kinematic equations of motion. Let me introduce another one, displacement time relation. The velocity of the body is given by the first derivative of the displacement. Already in the velocity time relation we saw the acceleration of the body is given by the first derivative of the velocity. Here first derivative of the displacement with respect to time. Which is v is equal to ds. Here s referred for displacement with respect to time, or ds is equal to v into dt. Since we know v is equal to u plus at in the equation number 1, we substitute this in the section of for v. ds is equal to u plus at into dt. Assume that initially the time is t is equal to 0. The particle started from the origin. At a later time t, the particle displacement is s. Further, assuming that acceleration is time independent, we have, while integrating this and the left hand side and right hand side, from 0 to s integration of ds and 0 to t integrating u dt plus 0 to t integrating at dt, we get, instead of ds while integrating we get s, and instead of this u dt from 0 to t we get ut, and to equal values we get 1 by 2 as a constant and put at square. This is the equation number 2. S is equal to ut plus 1 by 2 at is the equation of motion number 2. Velocity displacement relation. The acceleration is given by the first derivative of velocity with respect to time. So acceleration is equal to dv by dt, which is equal to we separate the value dv as this dv as dv by ds into ds by dt. If you cancel this ds and ds, then it will become dv by dt. Okay, can you understand? If you cancel this ds and ds, then it became dv by dt. So we take this dv by ds as it is, and instead of ds by dt we put v from here. V is equal to ds by dt, we put v instead of this ds by dt. Since ds by dt is equal to v, where s is the displacement traversed. Now the equation is rewritten as a is equal to 1 by 2 dv square by ds. We square this v and v, so dv square by ds, or ds is equal to, we take this ds here and the a comes under this dv square. So ds is equal to 1 by 2 a into dv square. Integrating the above equation using the fact when the velocity changes from u2 to v2, displacement charges from 0 to s, we get integrating 0 to s is equal to integrating u to v, okay, initial to final 1 by 2 a d into v square. If you integrate this, you get s is equal to 1 by 2 a. Because of u and v, we put v square minus u square, and if you take this v square, or if you keep this v square in the right hand side and take this 2a and this minus u to the left hand side, we will have v square is equal to u square plus 2as. This minus u, when you take this minus u to the next left hand side, it becomes a plus u square. This is equation number 3 in the kinematic equation of motion. We can also derive the displacement s in terms of initial velocity u and the final velocity v. If you do that in the equation number 1, we can write at is equal to v minus u. Already we have v is equal to u plus at, but little we change, or we take the u into the other right hand side as a minus u, and we substitute this in the equation number 2. We get s is equal to ut plus 1 by 2 v minus u the whole bracket t, or if you cancel all this or take the u as a common to the both sides, then s is equal to u plus v whole bracket t divided by 2. This is the equation number 4 of kinematic equations. These equations 1, 2, 3 and 4 are called kinematic equations of motion and have a wide variety of practical applications. Remember students, this question is very important one till your completion of your graduations. Equation of motion is that much important question, so understand or take care to learn this question. Altogether, let me give all the kinematic equation of motion are: first one v is equal to u plus at, and second one s is equal to ut plus 1 by 2 at square, third one v square is equal to u square plus 2as, and the fourth one s is equal to u plus v whole bracket t divided by 2. Now equation of motion under gravity. Let me explain this equation of motion under gravity. We know that near the surface of the earth, the acceleration due to gravity g is constant. All straight line motions under the acceleration can be well understood using the kinematic equations which we saw earlier. And we are going to see the equation of motion of a particle which have a falling freely or falling vertically from the height, like this picture. A body is falling from a height of from a top of a building. The case 1, we take a body falling from a height h, and now consider an object of mass m falling from a height h. This is the height h. Assume that there is no air resistance. Let us choose the downward direction as positive y axis. This is a positive y axis. The object experiences acceleration g due to gravity. Okay, due to gravity, this object experiences a acceleration g. which is constant near the surface of the earth. While it reaches the surface, it have a constant acceleration. We can use kinematic equations to explain its motion. We have acceleration A vector is equal to G J cap. By comparing the components, we get Ax is equal to 0 and Az is equal to 0 while Ay is equal to G, because we take the downward direction as positive y axis. So another picture to explain you more. Let us take, for simplicity, Ay is equal to A is equal to G. If the particle is thrown with initial velocity u downward, which is in negative y-axis, then the velocity and the position at a particle at any time t is given by v is equal to u plus gt. Instead of a, in the equation number 1 of kinematic equation, we put g. Then this is negative y-axis and this is positive y-axis. Remember, this is negative y-axis and this is positive y-axis. Y is equal to ut plus 1 by 2 gt square, which is one of our equation of motion. The square of the speed of a particle when it is at distance of y from the hilltop is v square is equal to u square plus 2gy. Instead of a we put g and s we put y. Suppose the particle starts from rest, then the initial velocity u is equal to 0. Then the velocity is v, the position of the particle at and the v2 at any time t are given by for a point y from the hilltop, and v is equal to g into t. We know y is equal to 1 by 2 gt square. Okay, so v square is equal to 2gy. V square is equal to 2gy. This is equation number 5 and this is equation number 6. The time t is equal to capital T and taken by the particle to reach the ground, for which y is equal to height h, and it is given by using the equation number 5. H is equal to, instead of y we put h is equal to 1 by 2 gt square. Instead of small t we put capital T. Therefore, if we take the t square here and put the h here, then t is equal to root of, because t square is equal to 1 by 2 g divided by h. Instead of doing that, taking the square and taking the square root in the opposite side, t is equal to root of 2h by g. The equation 8, t is equal to root of 2h by g, implies that greater the height h, particle takes more time t to reach the ground. Lesser the height, it takes lesser time to reach the ground. It depends upon the height of the ground. The speed of a particle when it reaches the ground, y is equal to h, can be found using the equation 6. V square, that means the velocity depends upon the 2 into g into y. That means here the y is h and g is equal to the gravity, acceleration. So V ground is equal to 2gh. V ground is equal to root of 2gh. The above equation implies that the body falling from greater height h will have a higher velocity when it reaches the ground. That means if you fall down, if you try to jump from the top of school or a college building, that means if you try to jump from a top of a mountain, then you will get higher velocity, so the damage will also be very high. The motion of a body falling towards the earth from a small altitude, that means h very much less than r, purely under the force of gravity is called free fall. Here r, capital R, is the radius of the earth. If the h is lesser than r, then it is called as free fall. Okay, now let's move to the equation of motion of a particle using a body thrown vertically upwards. Usually the batsman in a cricket hits the ball vertically upwards. Consider an object of mass m thrown vertically upwards with the initial velocity u. Let us neglect the air friction here also. In this case, we choose the vertical direction as positive y, and in the first one we use it as a negative y, but now it is in the vertical direction, we take it as a positive y, and the acceleration is against the gravity, so a is equal to minus g. Neglect air friction and the g points towards the negative y axis. Therefore, the kinematic equation for this motion are velocity and position of the object at any time t are v is equal to u minus gt, or s is equal to ut minus 1 by 2 gt square. The velocity of the object at any position y from the point where the object is thrown is v square is equal to u square minus 2g y, absolutely reversed from the initial one.